Alright guys, so today's video is very different from the normal. Today we're going to take a look at the LUX and how you can build one for yourself. So we'll go through head to toe on the assembly tips, what you need to do, and how you can get yourself one of these built in no time. Alright, so we're going to start off first at the back of the gun. So I'll get this disassembled all the way, and we'll show you how to start just from the back. Then we'll head to the front, do the wiring, the electronics, and then the final assembly, and at the end, tuning tips and what you can do to get yours shooting perfectly. Alright, so right here are all of the parts that you will need to assemble the rear half of your gun. These 3 parts will be printed. I recommend printing them pretty solid. I did like 4 walls at like 20% infill. It's a pretty thin walled piece, so don't worry too much about infill, but definitely make this as strong as you can. Now, for the rear half, to get started on assembly, you can route your wires to begin with before you do any of this. So I would recommend before this step, route at least 1 wire. Now, the wire I used for this is 24 gauge speaker wire. You can pick this up at most automotive stores. The reason I went with this stuff is because both wires are connected together. So you don't got to worry about any loose ends. You don't got to worry about heat shrinking the whole thing. And this keeps it really, really thin, which you'll see helps out a lot in the future. So for the sake of this video, I'm not going to put that in, but I would recommend following the wiring channels that are included while I'm doing this, and make sure you have a lot of extra. You can always cut it off. Can't really make extra. So starting off, you'll take your rear half, and this is your barrel nut aligner. Now, the barrel nut aligner sits right in here, just like that, and it should be a pretty tight fit. You'll make sure that all 4 holes are aligned, and once they are, you can put your wire right through there, all the way to the back out of this hole. Now, you'll take your aluminum tube. Now, you should have these pre-drilled, just so that your screws fit in, you know, nice and freely, but the heads are not falling through. Now, this will slip right on. You might need to sand this tolerance right here. I left a little extra because I wanted a very tight fit. I get all of it nice and lined up. And you have to have at least 1 screw holding this in. Now, that barrel retention nut, or the alignment nut, whatever you want to call it, has to have 1 screw in to prevent it from falling out the front. The reason I made it removable and not part of the rear half was if you wanted to print a different one, if say your hop-up has some weird irregularities, or you want to run a different hop-up entirely, that's completely an option. Just slide it out, pop a new one in, and it helps you get way better alignment with your hop-up and making sure it's nice and rigid in there. So now you'll go in from the back of the gun with your hop-up. I think this is a 280 millimeter inner barrel. You can run up to a 310, assuming you use, you know, the full foot-long aluminum tube. You'll take your barrel, just slide it in from the back, and it should be a nice snug fit and push all the way forward. Now you might have noticed that I have O-rings on the outer barrel, or sorry, inner barrel, excuse me. And the reason for that is I designed there to be a lot of extra room in the front. Now, you'll put these O-rings on, you know, consecutively until when pushing forward on it from the rear, from this window, you want to push hard. I want to make sure that your mag seats properly, right? You want it to be a nice tight fit. And that's how you make sure you got good mag alignment. So if you have any mag compatibility issues, that's why you need to shim the hop up with O-rings, or you could print shims. I think O-rings are just a little easier. Now you're gonna take your engine. So for prep for your engine, this is a Backdraft Phoenix. This should work with almost any engine that's V2. And for V3 engines, I will be coming out with a little spacer piece. So you don't have to reprint the whole back half. You just need a different spacer, and this will adjust your nozzle length, basically. Now this is your alignment piece. You want to make sure that this face right here, this little circle, is properly aligned with your hop up. You might need to sand that. All you want to do is make sure there's no side-to-side wobble with your hop up. That'll help you a lot with your nozzle alignment. Now, you'll take your alignment piece and you'll slide it over your engine. This should be a tight fit. If you have any issues with it being loose, either scale down your part in your slicer or maybe use a bit of tape. I use some tape right here. Now, this was just to help with alignment on the back, but I will be coming out with a rear alignment piece just to make sure that this engine is rock solid in there. All right, now we can take our back half, our back assembly, and take our engine, and it's as easy as just sliding it in. Should be a nice tight fit. There should be very little wobble up and down side to side, and it's at this point that you should check for your nozzle alignment. You can do all your tuning from here. Now, once you've got this, you're gonna need an AEG spring, and I know that's a bit weird, but this is a cut down M100. This is gonna provide tension to the whole system. So you're gonna take it and you're gonna place it right there behind your engine, and that's gonna push forward and keep everything locked in place once your back half is on. You'll also plug in your connector right here. You will have to solder that. I'll go over that in the wiring portion of the video, but you will have to solder in your connector and plug in your engine right now. Then you can put this, your back plate, or your stock plate, whatever you want to call it, will compress all of this. And then with these, once again, M4 by 12, you'll screw down. Sorry, this might be a bit loud, but screw down just like that, and that holds everything nice and tight together. Should be rock solid. If you have any issues with tolerances, again, you can let me know. Another really, really important part to this back half is your magazine release. Now, the magazine release is very, very finicky from mag to mag. Every mag is slightly different. So I wanted this piece to have a lot of extra so that you could tune it. So I'll be right back. I need to grab the proper screwdriver. All right, so for the mag release, this is a separate part. I kind of forgot to include this before. I didn't take it apart, but you're gonna unscrew. Now this is quite a long screw. Let me make sure I get this right. This is a M3 by 30 millimeter screw. You only need one of these for the whole gun. This backs out all the way. Now, let me get that out. Once this is out, your mag release should just fit right in. So this piece right here, your mag release, don't worry about the tape, that's fixed in the files. But you'll need a small cut down spring. This is just a pen spring, it fits right in there. And you'll need a drill bit. Can't remember what size, but just test it out. Take your M3 screw and hold it up. It should be smooth right in here. You should drill out your rear receiver so that it's a smooth fit. And you want it to be a nice tight fit, as in it threads into your mag release piece. So right here, as you can see, the threads are catching and it's moving in it. You'll cut down your spring, and now is when you'll start filing. So the little notch that holds your mag in place, you need to start filing at this point. You can test it by putting your mag in, make sure it's inserted all the way and, you know, feeding with your hop up, and you can look at your hop window. You'll take your piece, you'll put it in place, and you'll test if it holds your mag in place. And you want it to just click when your mag's put in place. You do not want there to be a lot of play. That can cause you a lot of feeding issues. So file this down until you got a nice snug fit, And then assembly is basically the same as the disassembly I showed you. Put that in place, take your screw, put it in place, and just thread it all the way in, making sure that it at least exposes itself a little bit on this end. And that's basically the rear half of the LUX. That's the whole assembly. Tuning I'll go over separate, but basically it's just dealing with taping and making sure you got good nozzle alignment. It's really easy, thankfully, with this because you only have to remove your back plate, which is 4 screws. It's a lot easier than taking out your whole gearbox or drilling and tapping and putting little set screws to get your nozzle alignment perfect. This is way simpler, and it lets you service your engine a lot faster with only 4 screws. All right, now for the front of the gun, this is the main piece that you will need to print. So this piece, it's not fully taken apart right now, but this is basically your entire front trigger group. This piece should be printed on its side, just like that. I, again, did pretty high infill, just making sure it's strong enough. You do need supports on this side, unfortunately, but it's really not too bad. Now, inside, this is a Gate Aster V3. It has a custom wiring harness. This part is probably the trickiest part of the build. It is the most time-consuming, but it is the most rewarding. So, right in here, I'm not going to take it out just for the sake of simplicity. It's kind of a pain to get in, but all you'll do is take your Gate Aster, drop it in. It should fit just right in place. There's a tiny, this screw, if you can see, is just the same as any gearbox screw that holds down your MOSFET or your ETU or whatever. Make sure that in the back, you'll have a little window. I'll actually take this off. You'll have a window. You want to make sure that you can see your selector sensors. Those are very important. Right here. So you should see your 2 sensors, and it should be sitting nice and flush in here. Now, I'll just do the wiring harness really quickly right here. It's the same as the stock wiring harness. You want all of the connectors to be almost identical on the Aster. The only difference is where they connect. Now, by that I mean length of the wires. Again, I used my speaker wire that I showed earlier. All you do, solder it to the main connectors on the board, and then you loop it back. So inside of here is where I have my Y between, my hot lead going to the solenoid. So this is my battery connector, and over here, all the way at the end, this connects to my solenoid. Make sure you get the lengths of these wires correct. The easiest way to do it is just by mapping it out on your gun, putting all the components down and just seeing how long you need your wires. You can always cut them shorter later on. Now, for the front, you will likely need to drill out your trigger mounting or trigger pinholes. I drilled these out to about an 1/8 inch. Just fine tune it, make sure you get a nice smooth trigger. You don't want wobble. Every printer is different, so I left this one out to be drilled as well. Your trigger, this is kind of weird. So this is a V3 MOSFET and a V2 trigger. Your trigger won't work to begin with when you put it in the gun. You need to do this mod, and this is gluing a little white tab. Now, this tab, I'll kind of put some pictures here, or show it up close. If this is focused, if not, I'll put pictures. But this tab is going to interface with the optical sensor on the Gate Aster V3. Now, this piece I made out of just taking an old gift card. No, this is a hotel card. And I just cut it up and glued it. I did about 3 layers. Put some super glue, use super glue. Set it up and make sure you have enough room for your spring and that it's not rubbing on your actual MOSFET. When you put it in here, it should be pretty free to float. It shouldn't have any issues, no resistance. Your trigger spring, you can test it here as well. Put that in place, make sure everything sits properly. This was designed to work with a Maxx trigger. It'll probably work with most other triggers, but you will need to file some small areas just to make sure your fitment is clear if you want to get a really short trigger pull. You can still use the adjustment screws, but there are some tolerances that are pretty tight depending on your printer. All right, now that we have the front, one crucial part of the wiring harness is making sure that this wiring, this wiring bridge is offset from your actual ETU. This is really important. This is the main reason why I use that speaker wire, because you don't want your wires to be messing with your trigger. This is your other piece. So this is your, I guess, plate, your cover plate. And in the cover plate, it'll have two small little grooves here. Now these, you might, depending on what gauge wire you use, might need to heat it up and pry these, but the idea is you will take these grooves and slide your wire into them. And this way, once your plate is on, when they're seated in that groove, rested up against the aluminum, there's plenty of room for your trigger and they won't interfere with it one bit. This is really important. This is probably one of the hardest steps to get that wiring harness nice and clean for, but it's very crucial to making sure your trigger won't gum up or have any issues. Now this trigger plate, as I showed, goes on just like that. Make sure obviously your trigger would be inside, and you're gonna take, once again, these are M4 by 12 screws, and these just go straight in. Pretty simple. Don't over torque these, but don't adjust your trigger until you have these in. Otherwise you might have issues with, you know, the trigger not sitting flush, and make sure it's not binding up. I would test this before you fit it all to the gun. Make sure your trigger is free floating, and make sure your ETU and everything is working properly before you make your wiring harness and do all of this. Now for grip, I use a PTS grip. It should work with almost any grip. It's just standard M4 AEG. Now I did have to file a teeny bit. That's just to get a really tight fit. The other grip I tested had no issues, slid right on. So it depends what grip you have, but don't be afraid to file a little bit of material away. Now you'll slide your battery connector wire in, and just like a normal AEG, drop your screws down and screw the grip down, connecting it. Make sure you don't over torque these. This whole build doesn't use any threaded inserts. I didn't have any issues with it. As long as you're not over torquing and you're being careful, all of them should hold perfectly fine. They're very strong. They're plenty deep enough. Just be careful. Don't over torque any of these screws. Just be smart. Another add-on that I'll add, I just dropped the screw, that I'll add to the files is this piece. Now, this is a switch. And the way this works is you take these switches you can buy off Amazon. They're just regular, I forgot what connect, JST on-off switches. And, well, that happened. All you'll do is fish your wire into your grip, and you'll plug one connector into your gun, just like that. And then your other connector will go to your battery. And this will basically just give you an on-off switch on the gun. Makes it a lot easier. You don't have to disconnect your battery every time and screw your base plate on. Saves you a ton of time. I'll include the files for this. Just sits right here. You can put a simple screw just like that, hold it in place, and then you get an on-off switch for your whole gun, which is really a huge upgrade over having to, especially a lot of you coming from backgrounds with like ESG grips, having to unscrew that back plate on your grip every time you want to take your battery out can be kind of a headache. So this saves you a lot of time, and you really don't need to charge your battery often, so it's far less of a hassle. Now for your selector, part that a lot of you are probably interested in, you will need another one of these tiny screws that you use to hold your ETU down, or whatever it is, and your selector. Now, your selector, you will need to put a little piece. You can either paint this white or print it white, either or, but the gate uses an optical sensor, so you need contrast. So inside of that little recessed area that you'll notice, I decided to glue in a piece of black paper. You could also color it with Sharpie, and then make sure that everything is smooth. You need contrast between these two surfaces to get your selector to read your selector properly. So drop it down, make sure it slides nice and freely, and then that tiny screw will go right in. You do need to drill out the holes for this. I didn't want them to be printed because I wanted to make sure that you could get the sizing properly and make sure everything works properly. You can either use super glue or Loctite on that screw just to prevent it from backing out. But make sure your selector is sliding nice and smooth. And then check on the app and make sure that you're actually getting a reading from your selector. And then you can tune it afterwards once you have everything assembled to get all your fire modes. So I was able to get 3. I was able to get safe, semi all the way on the left, and full auto right in the middle. All right, so now that you have your front and rear assembly done separate, you are going to need to take off, you know, your butt plate and your spring if you want to do it the way I'm doing it. There are other ways. It's kind of up to preference. But there are 3 pieces that you will need to print for the full assembly of the gun. So the first piece, this is, I think, called the nut holder in the files. This piece basically will hold 2 M4 nuts. You might need to either glue, or I put a little bit of tape, a little bit of painter's tape, just to hold it in. It's not structural at all. Just holds the screw in, or the nut in for when you screw it in place. For that last one especially. This piece, this triangle-like piece, this is your barrel stabilizer. To prep this piece, you want to make sure that it slides freely in your tube, nice and free, as you can tell, but it doesn't really have much play at all. It has very little play. And the other part you want to check is with your barrel, of course, that it's a smooth. You want, same thing, you want it to be smooth, but really no play at all. And the final piece, this piece is the most customizable. This is going to be your barrel attachment piece. So in my case, I put this is a M11 to 14 millimeter counterclockwise thread adapter. So like a pistol thread adapter. You can use them like from a hi-capa. That just screws on, excuse me, that just screws on to the front of the piece. And then this piece, you can tell I have tape. That's really just to shim it. I wanted this to be a super tight fit. Especially because I run a suppressor and I don't want baffle strikes. So I want this to be a tight piece in there. And then you'll see when I get into assembly how everything sandwiches together. To drill the bottom holes on your, I guess for your grip assembly on your aluminum tube, you need to take your bottom piece, place it where you want. Now, this is completely up to preference. You could slide this wherever you want. I run it all the way at the front. That's how I think it looks the best. And then once you have it marked out, make sure you hold it nice and steady and also square to, you know, the other holes that you have mounted for the rear. And what you want to do is mark them with a Sharpie. So you have 3 holes, 1 in the back of the grip and then 2 here inside of your M-LOK slots. Mark them and then kind of fold it this way. And right where your wire comes out, that goes out to your solenoid, you're going to want to drill a larger hole. I think this one's 3/8. You can get away with 1/4 inch, whatever's easiest. Just make sure you get rid of burrs and anything that would, you know, scratch or chafe your wire as it's going through, because you do not want to cut your connection. For assembly, I like to start at the front of the gun. So right now we're just going to run through a full assembly of what everything would look like if I was building this myself. Okay, so I'm going to route my solenoid wire all the way to the back. You want it to come out of your tube. And yeah, just like that. Make sure you put it through the right hole, obviously. Now that it's in there nicely, you are going to take this plate. You're going to place it and make sure that the holes are aligned. It's really important that you make sure that these are properly aligned, and this piece can be pretty finicky. So make sure once you have it in place that you hold it in place. So I am going to be right, just like that. Then I'm going to slide my wire. Make sure you guide that wire all the way in. Once this is in, line up this, and now your sandwich is basically complete. You'll take whatever you're using. The benefit of having actual nuts is that you're going to have a lot stronger of a connection. You can really torque those 2 down, make sure your grip, that's already holding. And then you'll go ahead and put in the rear one. I'm just not going to do that for the sake of time. Now you can take your front piece. Actually, sorry. Now you can take your barrel, barrel stabilizer, and that's what you'll put in before you put this in. Now I'll go back to the back half of the gun and kind of deconstruct it. So you have your hop up, your engine, and your main, I guess for lack of a better term, main frame. You're going to pass your solenoid wire all the way to the back of the gun. I like to have about 4 or 5 inches stuck out the back, and then I put in the barrel retention nut. Make sure everything is lined up. Very important that it's aligned. And that your wire is not, you know, getting pinched by anything. Now I'm gonna take this whole piece and I'm gonna stuff my wire, my excess wire, back into the tubing. And then, like I showed earlier, slide my 2 halves of the gun. You might need to do some, you know, twisting, and just make sure you have good alignment, just like that. And like I said before, again, you only need 1 for now. You can put in the other 4 later. Just need to hold that barrel nut in place when you put in your spring. So, have that done. Now I'm gonna slide in my hop up. And make sure that your hop up is not gonna crush your wire, and that your wire is nicely in that channel. Oh, I had this in the wrong hole, sorry. Make sure that that is nice and smooth. Slide that all the way down. Take your engine, same thing. Now you're gonna plug in your wire. Fold them nice and neatly. You do not want to have any pinching of your wires when you put that back plate on. Put your spring back in, your butt plate, and now you're gonna press, and make sure you press pretty hard. You wanna keep everything nice and sandwiched. You don't wanna put too much stress on just one screw. You want it to be evenly distributed. Otherwise you could possibly strip out the plastic. I haven't had it happen yet, and I've kind of been beating on mine, but you still don't really want to jinx that. And again, don't over torque these. These are into plastic. And they're very finicky sometimes, but there we go. We'll do 2 for now. That's your rear half. Once again, no play in anything. Everything should be nice and solid. Now you'll go back to the front. You'll take your barrel, I guess, stabilizer, and you'll click that in place. It's really hard for me to show you with the lighting in here, but you want to make sure that it's nice and seated over your barrel and that your barrel is perfectly centered. Then, the final piece, you take that front muzzle attachment device, you put that in place, and then you'll get that M4 screw back into your M-lock rail, and it'll go nice and neat underneath there. Oops. This way, when you're ready to, and you want to mount something like a suppressor, should just thread right on. You get metal threads, so they're not printed, so they'll be a lot stronger. And you have your M-lock section. So that should be the complete assembly of the LUX. Now that you have your LUX fully assembled, it's time for tuning. So we'll take it and connect it to your phone. This is all done through the Gate Control Station app. It's really simple. If you follow their tutorials online, it takes 2 seconds. From here, you can go to things like your trigger, and you can basically get a live feed. When you pull your trigger, it'll pull it on the app. You can do the same thing for your selector and tune everything through the app. So you don't have to deal with shimming anything. You can get a very, very easy hair trigger on this. And the biggest plus is you can tune your engine directly on the app while you're shooting. So no more messing with FCUs, no more finickiness. Everything is simple, streamlined, and a lot lighter than it would be with a proper FCU. If you really have an issue with using the Gate Aster V3, let me know in the comments, and I can probably design a separate version, but you will most likely need to further, I guess, machine the aluminum tube to allow it, because the tolerance is not very tight. If you have any questions, let me know down in the comments below. I'd be happy to answer them. The files for this thing will be for download in the description, as well as a full parts list. Again, questions, let me know. Any suggestions, I would be happy to implement them. I want to continue making this thing better for airsofters. I want it to be as simple as possible to work on, and just a good platform that you can use at any field at any time and you feel comfortable using. So any critiques, I'm happy to take, and hope you had a good time watching. Thanks.